solutions. Oh, we just started the recording. I'm going to start that over. Welcome everyone to the second session of Selling More Maine Foods. Our session today is Upcycling Innovators in Maine. My name is Tanya Swain, and I'll be doing this morning's introductions. Today is part 2 of this year's series. As we're getting settled, a reminder to please mute your microphone. The session will be recorded and posted online. If you do not want to be recorded, please shut your video off. Our panelists will introduce themselves and share their stories in a moment, and we invite you to post questions in the chat during the discussion. Selling More Maine Foods is an information and education series for value-add food and beverage producers in Maine. Our program is coordinated by 4 organizations. I work with Maine Food Strategy, which convenes people across the state to work on projects that benefit from state-level collaborative approaches to address food system challenges. And now I'm going to hand off to one of my partners, Christine, to introduce herself.
Good morning. Thank you, Tanya. Thanks everyone for joining on this snowy morning. My name is Christine Cummings. I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Grocers and Food Producers Association. MGFPA is a membership-based trade group representing Main Street businesses, independently owned and operated grocery and convenience stores, supermarkets, food and beverage, producers and processors, and wholesale and distributor partners. We are primarily a legislative advocacy organization. We are based in Augusta, and I spend much of my time at the State House during the legislative session. Currently, the Maine legislature is slated to adjourn mid-April, so we're definitely in the thick of it now. We work closely with the Maine Department of Ag, Department of Labor, DECD, and many others at the state and serve as a liaison. We are a community dedicated to the prosperity of Maine's grocery and food producer industries through excellence in advocacy, networking, and education. And so I welcome anyone to reach out if they have any questions or they'd like to see a preview of our legislative work. Thank you. I'll hand it over to Bill.
Good morning. I am Bill Soretta, Executive Director of Fork Food Lab. We're located in South Portland. Fork is a member organization of now over 80 food businesses. We provide shared facilities for manufacturing and food processing, and rapidly moving into areas of food manufacturing, particularly focusing on upcycling of products. So this presentation is of interest to us in many ways. I'm now going to turn it over to Sue Hansen.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sue Hansen, and I'm from the Maine Center for Entrepreneurs, and I manage our Food Accelerator programs. So MCE has a bunch of different programs for Maine entrepreneurs, helping them to build and grow their businesses. You may all be familiar with our Top Gun program, which is our flagship program that's been around for 15 years for startups that culminates in a pitch contest in the end. And we're in the throes of that. And then in the last 6 years, we've launched 2 food accelerator programs in partnership with Focus Maine that are dedicated to really helping Maine food and beverage food producers grow their businesses. So for companies that are looking to scale up or to more aggressively expand markets and distribution. So in the last 6 years, we've worked with over 90 food and beverage companies through our food accelerator programs, and probably 125 or 130 if you count the food companies going through our Top Gun program. So when we look at our programming for food and beverage companies, we feel that we have programs to cover each stage of your business life cycle, from startup to scale up to market expansion. So it's been a lot of fun working with these companies over the years and watching them grow. And a few of our speakers today have been through for the Maine Center for Entrepreneurs programs, and that's really exciting too. So thanks everybody for being here.
And I think we're going to hand it back to Bill now.
So good morning. I'm going to, we have a really great group of presenters today who represent a range of the upcycling community, both in terms of what they're doing with their upcycled products, how they develop them, and how they're aggregated. And I think it's probably, looking at this group, it does represent the current state of affairs relative to Maine in terms of what is going on here. So we have Ben Slayton, Patrick Breeding, Ben Conniff, Doug Klopp, Mohammed Sheikh, Bethany Allen, and I think we're missing one here to represent them. We're going to have each of them introduce themselves and what they're doing. We're going to go into 3 groups in presentation. Ben and Patrick will be in the first group, and each group will go, we're going to tell who you are, what each of you do, how did you find each other, and how are you growing your relationship, and what do you look at for the future. And then from there, we're going to do this for all 3 groups and then go into a further discussion. If you have questions, put them into the chat and we will respond to those later in the morning. So I think we are now going to start with Ben and Patrick.
Thank you very much, Bill. Thanks everybody for joining us on this beautiful morning. I'm from Luke's Lobster. I'm a co-founder and the Chief Innovation Officer here at Luke's. For those of you that don't know us, we're a vertically integrated seafood company, predominantly dealing in lobster. So we buy live lobster directly from fishermen at the wharves. We bring them to our own production facility. Then we distribute out either to our own group of restaurants around the country, or in branded products to supermarkets, or online direct to consumer on our online seafood market. So we bring in about 5 million pounds of live lobster every year. What I think all of you probably know about lobster is it's expensive. And what not everybody maybe thinks about all that often is how much of the lobster typically gets eaten. Really, it's the claw, the knuckle, and the tail meat that gets eaten from the lobster. And most of the rest really often just gets thrown away and put in the landfill. And that meat that we actually eat is often less than 20% of the weight of the lobster. So when you think about it that way, so much of this incredibly wonderful and incredibly expensive food that we all take in is just going to landfills so frequently. As a lobster producer, we don't want to see that happen for environmental reasons, and we can't really afford to have that happen and to keep paying good prices at the dock to our lobstermen. So at Luke's, we really focused in on what higher value uses we can make of those parts of the lobster that aren't the claw, knuckle, and tail meat. First off, we focus on what more from that lobster can be made into food as potentially the highest used. So we look at the leg meat, the body meat, and we've come up with tools to extract those parts of the lobster and actually put those parts of the lobster into food. And they're actually the driving force behind most of our branded grocery products now. So if you go to Whole Foods or many other supermarkets now, you'll find a lobster mac and cheese, a lobster ravioli, a lobster bisque, lobster cakes. All of those include minced body meat from the lobster and rolled leg meat from the lobster, parts that used to go to waste that are now going into our value-added products. Super excited about that. Then we look at the shell, which makes up so much of the weight. And rather than just chucking all that shell into the garbage, we're drying it, crushing it, currently using it for mostly for a natural fertilizer that replaces the chemical fertilizers that are more often used. But we're exploring higher uses for that as well by extracting the chitosan in it and exploring all the many ways that chitosan can be used. But then the last thing that's been super exciting is the glycoprotein inside the lobster that we really weren't thinking about until we were approached by Patrick. But that's now something that we're able to extract from the lobster for a really incredible use. And I'm going to turn it over to Patrick to talk about how the relationship formed and what that incredible use is.
Perfect setup, Ben. Well done. My name is Patrick. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Marin Skincare. We create skincare products for people with dry, damaged, irritated skin using the glycoprotein found in lobster as the key ingredient. So this protein is the all-in-one immune system of the lobster, and it is found in the circulatory fluid. So If you've ever wondered why lobster have the ability to pop off and regenerate limbs, are incredibly good at fighting off disease and healing wounds, it's because of the protein that is now used in skincare and personal care products. A little bit of context on the story, because I think it's interesting around how this unique form of upcycling came to be. My partner and co-founder, Amber, and I were biomedical engineering grad students at the University of Maine that just wanted to do things with our careers that helped people. We had met a lobster scientist named Dr. Bob Bayer, who was always interested in finding value-added applications of processing byproducts, particularly high-value ones, and if possible in biotech or diagnostic or something where we could take, you know, value X of raw material and turn it into 10X that value and really create something meaningful and a meaningful potential new revenue stream for Luke's and other processors. He was focused on this glycoprotein and had made the connection between the scientific literature, just understanding what other people in other fields are using these proteins for, and what's going down the drain at the Luke's facility, and started to just play in the lab a little bit through grants, through moonlighting in his kitchen, putting skincare products together. He found that in the same way this protein helps lobsters regenerate limbs, it could help repair the skin barrier, hydrate the skin barrier, and soothe irritation. When we met him, my partner Amber had horrible eczema, dry, damaged, red, itchy skin all over her body. Nothing had worked for her entire life. And so we did the science, we made sure it was safe, we patch tested it, and we saw some efficacy data in the lab. But we also just had an N of 1 type discovery moment where we convinced her to try this DIY product on her eczema. And within 2 days, it completely cleared her skin. And this was not something as scientists we were skeptic about. We didn't expect anything to happen, but it completely changed her life. So following that discovery, we started to create the brand that is now Marin, that you can find on our website, on LL Bean, at Sea Bags, and hopefully in the future on the shelves at Target, Sephora, and Ulta. It's been a really great entrepreneurial journey launching in 2020 and growing to where we are now. But the cool thing we've been able to do is partner exclusively with Luke's to put together a proprietary collection process to sift this glycoprotein from the circulatory fluid as a waste stream at these processors. It literally goes right down the drain at Luke's, and I think if anything, it was a nuisance before we started collecting it. And we get this raw material from Luke's. As scientists, we built our own lab and purification protocol to turn the raw material into a purified material, and we send it to all of the things that it needs to go to become a clean skincare product. So we send it to personal care product safety testing, to microbiological testing. We have new quality control standards and SOPs in our partnership with Luke's and in-house in our lab. And we've been able to successfully turn this raw material into a purified personal care and skincare product ingredient that is now clinically studied and validated for dry, damaged, eczema-prone skin. I think the takeaway from our partnership and this entire discovery is there was no real existing supply chain or distribution network to connect this waste product into. This was truly a discovery made by a scientist who was curious, that just took a look at what was going down the drain and looked up the scientific names of those, and just did some literature research and used Google Scholar and read some publications and connected A to B. And that's how the discovery happened. So I think our story is really unique. We solved a real consumer problem. So it is a high available thing that solved a critical problem for a large consumer base. And that's why it's worked. And I would challenge anyone to think about what else is going down the drain or into the garbage or in landfills from your facility, and what other scientific uses that may not well be known are out there.
Thank you, Ben and Patrick. I think this is a great example of one possibility. And I think what Luke's Lobster has done is pretty much take the entire waste stream that they've created and working hard to pretty much eliminate the waste or use everything that's possible in that waste stream. And it sounds like there may be other items still sitting out there to be discovered. We're now going to move to Ben Slayton and Bethany Allen, and we're going to look at here a slightly different waste use that becomes a consumable product for us folks to eat. And this again is looking at a waste stream and finding a use for it. So Ben and Bethany, take it away.
Want me to go first, right? Yeah, okay. Hi, I'm Bethany Allen. I'm the co-owner of Harvest Tide Organics. We're located in Bodenham, Maine. We are a 60-acre organic vegetable farm that produces primarily for the retail CSA market. So for 10 years now, we've operated a delivery-based organic CSA where we deliver year-round vegetable shares to people all the way from from Bodenham down to South Portland and Westbrook. And we grow yearly on about 25 acres or so. And we, being a CSA farm and growing for the retail market as a market garden, we grow a wide range of vegetables, not quite everything, but we're not hyper focused, like just growing one thing. We grow pretty much everything. And we have large amounts of storage and production throughout the year. And we, because our market is also primarily direct to retail, we're mostly moving what we call A quality or market quality vegetables out to our customers. In terms of waste on a farm, I think it's a little bit different than it would be in manufacturing because we're often assessing, should this even come out of the field? Should this, before we even cull it, in a wash pack, in a production facility situation. So deciding, labor is absolutely our highest cost. And so if we can avoid spending more effort later on labor and sorting and just, kind of culling through different things, we will. And so our waste stream is pretty diverse in that there's stuff that we leave in the field, there's stuff that comes into the wash pack that we cull out, and then there's overage that we also sometimes over harvest and prep and then don't find a market for. And we've traditionally had a lot of different streams for some of these things. Most of it is either donation or compost. Yeah, that's sort of what we do. It's a wide range of vegetable things that we have extras in, and we're always trying to find a home for it, but also assessing the economic value of even harvesting it and not letting it just be tilled back into the soil. Ben?
Thanks, Bethany. Good morning, everybody. My name's Ben Slayton, and I'm a co-owner of Harvest Maine. And we are an upcycled plant-based snack company in Brunswick. We started in 2022. We currently have 3 veggie spreads out in the market, and we're working on a new line of fruit snacks. The University of Maine Food Innovation Center, the great work that Rob and Caitlin are doing up there, are helping us recipe test for a fruit snack. But the real thrust of our business is the raw materials that we use to make these goods. And with regard to the veggie spreads, we're partnering with local farms like Harvest Tide Organics and trying to find some of the produce that's slipping through the cracks and heading to compost, or as Bethany says, being left in the field. My business partner, Matt Chappell, used to own a restaurant where obviously food costs are very important to pay attention to. So he has a very rich background in value-added goods. How do we get the most out of raw materials? My former business was a whole animal butcher shop. So the concept of value-added products and processing was very important to the success of our business. So we both started with this assumption that, oh, well, when farms grow a field of peppers, there's going to be some percentage of peppers that they can't sell. And we're going to come in and save the day and just take those peppers, and they're going to be so happy. And it's all going to be great. And so that's where it started. We learned very quickly, and we're still going through the learning process, that it's not quite that simple, as Bethany started to allude to, and we'll talk more about this further in the discussion. Those seconds have a cost associated with them as well, and just like their firsts, and they need to factor in the cost of harvesting and wash pack, and then the vulnerability or the perishability of those items, particularly around peppers and the brassicas. Some of the root veggies that we use for our spreads are a little bit more durable, but there's some challenges. But getting back to how we first found Bethany, one of our spreads is brockamole. Hopefully some of you out there are familiar with our product line. And Matt and I were in search of someone who had broccoli, and Harvest Tide Organics is in Bodenham, just up the road from Brunswick. And we came across Bethany and Eric. And sure enough, broccoli and cauliflower, we learned, is also highly, if you look at a head of cauliflower wrong in the field, it gets a spot on it and all of a sudden can't be sold. But that's where value-added processing comes in. We can take that head of broccoli or cauliflower and cut away the blemish, and it's still very useful. And if we can take these items that would otherwise go to waste and churn them into our value-added product and get some value out of it, it's good for our business and it's good for the farmer as well. But what I really love about our relationship with Harvest Tide is that we were in search of blemished broccoli for a specific, recipe with our brockamole, and that's how it began. But it then evolved quickly, as Bethany mentioned. Like, they grow a lot of things, and the discussion, started to breed new ways to partner. And I think, just looking at my list, we ended up getting broccoli, cauliflower in the last 2 years, peppers, celeriac, parsnips, and even cilantro for our spreads. But over and above that, the facility that we process our vegetables in on the landing in Brunswick used to be a spot where Harvest Tide did a share pickup. And then the former tenant moved on, and they didn't know if that spot was available, but lo and behold, we were very happy to have them do a share pickup. And in those shares, they even sell our product. So it just is become a very rich partnership, and it's emblematic of all of our farm partners that we work with. It's just kind of cracking that seed open and seeing what can come from it. It's not as simple as we thought it would be. And I'll let Bethany talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we've learned over the last year and a half, and some of the solutions that we're either employing or thinking about trying as we move into the future and try to scale up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Ben sort of described it really well. There's often, and this isn't just Ben, it happens a lot in the donation world too. There's like an assumption that there's it's like an easy line from A to B to get the extra stuff that exists on a farm. And I think that, particularly because labor is such a large expense for us, like the harvest, the cost, even though once something is produced, like a pepper on a plant that has a sun scald on it, which would be like one soft white spot where it's been overexposed to the sun. Like even if you've already paid as a business to, seed that, grow it in a greenhouse with a propane, pot it up, plant it in the field, weed it, cover it, uncover it, all the work that goes into that, the cost, it's still like the cost to harvest it, harvesting something that is not marketable is still substantial enough that we would typically not pull in, I would not instruct a team to pull in blemished peppers into a wash pack. I would say cull them in the field, like literally do not put them in your bin, because what that does is you've pulled it off, you've there, it's like created weight in the bin, and then the wash pack team has to then sort it out. And there's a chance that it will be missed in wash pack, and then we've sent out on like lower quality produce, and that we definitely don't want to be doing. And so there's, our plan as a farm is always like quality control starts in the field. And not quite all farms operate that way, like where you put your energy and quality control can vary and you can do it well in different ways. But we start in the field because we've always been less staffed in a wash pack. We have more field people than wash pack people. So, and so the idea that there's just a straight line from something that's blemished in the field to an easy marketable thing that I have in a facility that I can box up and send, and that's a reason, like, and I know about how much I'm going to have. There's actually like a big gap of knowledge there. Like, I don't know, we don't as a business have like a good record of like every single pepper that hasn't been pulled back. Hasn't been harvested, or what that weight is, or what that weight is weekly. There's a lot of questions there for us. And so finding a way to plan for that, like to actually have a market for that, has been a learning process for us. And we've developed systems, very rudimentary. We are a farm in the systems in the field of like sorting while we're picking, when we know Ben and Matt are looking for product. The other issues that come up are that, anything that is a second quality, one of the major issues with selling it is that its shelf life is much shorter than something that's a first quality. Any blemish on any plant, for the most part, is going to greatly reduce its ability to hold. Which means that if we take the time to pull something in, I need to know that Matt and Ben are like ready to take it pretty immediately, which means I also have to find a way to get it to them pretty immediately. And we only do runs to Brunswick. 3 days a week is pretty good, but if it comes in on a Friday, we may not, so there's a whole like planning process, and that's just for one of the crops that we send to Ben. And so one of the things that we've been working through is kind of realizing that, the other thing too is that the amount of seconds is just very unpredictable. And even though we have a market for them with this particular production, we don't necessarily want to create them. Our highest and best value is retail. And we're getting the most the most value for our product if we sell it directly to our customers. And so we can't necessarily plan for seconds production. And it's very perishable. And we just don't know how much at any given point we're going to have. So we have been, certain crops, the planning process to make sure we have enough of what Ben and Matt need for each crop actually requires quite a bit more planning, both in like the field production, but then also the steps after harvest to make sure that we have a way of getting it to them in short fashion, and then also getting them the volume that they need. And so thankfully on their side, they can process and freeze things and keep things for a very long time. So there's like balance to it. But yeah, and so it's been a step-by-step sort of crop by crop process, and making sure that it gets, it kind of gets to them. And I think what we're finding is that the balance, it's not possible, or it's not quite as profitable or workable to just be like, yeah, we'll just send you the seconds things. We need to make sure we're hitting their numbers on the timeline that works for actual production. There has to be a component to like, we're going to plant this much for regular production, and then we'll send you the seconds as they're available. Because like, I can't, plan for losing a field of broccoli to, Alternaria or something. Like it doesn't quite work that way. But it's been a really cool learning process. And we were sort of discussing that like any new customer that kind of comes in, or new chain, like we have an established business. We've been distributing CSA shares. I think we're probably the largest CSA in the state. We've been doing this for 10 years. We have like lots of year-round customers. And so when we're talking about adding another channel, the process of, as a business that's sort of always understaffed and always our margins are always thin, like there's no venture capital in farming. We're having to be very sort of, suspicious is a negative word, but discerning in sort of how we have, used the labor on the farm to fill these other orders. And so it's like the building of a relationship, like Ben sort of talked about, is just super critical. And us sort of trusting that they're going to take the stuff that we harvest and then being able to trust us, and sort of building up a rapport is pretty critical. Because yeah, it's a lot of work and there's always a lot to do and never enough time. So that's sort of where we're at.
I'll speak to the relationship and trust
Mhm.
aspect. It's critical to our business, and we've learned, since it's not as simple as we thought it might be, to build in the buffer. So we don't want to be sitting here rooting for the farm partners to have bad broccoli, because that's not good for anyone. And our business model is really geared around working in service of the farms. How can we help the farm community of Maine work more efficiently and get more of their yield out of their field? And so we have found ways to protect our supply chains by, broadening our network of farmers. And we also, since, as Bethany mentioned, it's very perishable and, time sensitive for the farmer. But once we get it and can cook it and freeze it, we can all take a deep breath. And it's okay for us to, we predict what our needs are for the year. Because again, Maine has a short growing season. And we're looking out over the course of a whole year, because we produce our products on a year-round basis and have demand for them even in March and April. But there's no broccoli growing right now, so we have to think about what the annual demand would be. This is just business 101, but predict what our unit sales are going to be and how much broccoli we'll need to fulfill that. And then we, put a little overage in there, because it's okay if we have some and maybe business is good. But it also, in case the flow of seconds is not as strong, we've built some extra capacity there. But we're also exploring, like, this whole upcycled thing is a new term, and what does it really mean? And what if we just took a whole field of broccoli from Bethany and took the first grades plus the the off grades? That's a way of getting more of her harvest into the marketplace. And so we're still trying to figure out, is that upcycled? It is definitely using a good portion of things that would otherwise head to the compost, but it might be using some of the first grade as well. So we're exploring what that means and whether that fits into our business model or not. But this whole notion of what is upcycled is brand new and kind of exciting. So I'm looking forward. It was great to hear the Luke's Lobster Marin story. I'm looking forward to the next one, and we'll pass it off now.
Thanks, Bethany and Ben. So you can start to get a trend here of what the issues are from upcycling and sourcing, and how it impacts income of the producer, whether you're harvesting lobsters or broccoli. You're going to see some of the same issues. And if you remember, for those of you who attended last week's presentation, Anna Hammond, who's one of the leaders in this arena of upcycling and producing product, she said, focus on what is available and create your products from what might be available. And as both what Ben and Bethany said, you don't always know what's going to be available in a given year. And so once you get into this game of trying to build a product around an upcycled content, you have the pulls and on one side of having product available on a predictable basis versus not having product available on a predictable basis, and how do you fulfill that? Our next presenters, Doug Klopp and Mohammed Sheikh, are going to talk about a similar set of products, but going to a very different consumer. Doug, you're on.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Bill. My name is Doug Klopp, and I am with the Maine Farm and Sea Cooperative. Our mission is to work with farmers and fisher folk to develop products for institutional sales. And our products are also focused on utilizing underused or off-grade product. There are two projects that we currently are running. One is the Maine Marinara Collaborative, which took its inspiration from Anna, we heard from last week, who started at Fort Food Lab. and I think really was a trailblazer for what could be done, uh, focusing on produce that often doesn't leave the farm. We heard in all of these presentations, I think the statistic is around 30, or in Anna's slide last week, 35% of all produce grown in the state of Maine never makes it out of the field. And we heard from Bethany, from the farmer's perspective, about why that is an unfortunate necessity. There are products like Maine marinara that we can develop by using those off-grade tomatoes, the curly carrot, the sun-blemished red pepper that the American consumer won't buy at a full retail price. And we've been able to partner with Healthy Communities of the Capital Area and Maine Food Group, a local processor in Brunswick, to create a marinara for institutional sales. And this year we are in 19 schools. The marinara started rolling out last month. It's really exciting that Maine marinara and monkfish stew are the first two. There's also upcycling there. The first two to be certified by the Maine Department of Education for reimbursement under the local foods fund. So that's an important tie-in too, as we try to bring more revenue to farms and to not waste product that can be used to feed people. In this case, our kids. We're also working with the Maine Department of Corrections and Mountain View. Our sauce was actually pre-purchased by the school districts. They committed to buy this once that they had tasted the product and really wanted it. So that was super exciting. The other part of this project that's very important to us is that we're committed to 33% purchasing from BIPOC farmers in Maine. And we enter into a forward contracting arrangement where right about now, we'll front load pre-purchase some of the product that we won't see until July. And that's important because it brings the balance of equity when it comes to risk in our food system. Farmers have to bear almost all of the risk, and consumers really don't. We think about what happened to tomatoes last June and July in Maine. So by forward contracting, we spread that risk across the system. And be able to help farmers with some revenue early on. The other project that we're running is called the Maine Immigrant Green Collaborative, and that is in partnership with Wayside Food Programs and Farms for Food Equity, which is founded and run by Penny Jordan from Jordan's Farm in Cape Elizabeth. We engaged in conversations with our immigrant community here in southern Maine a few years ago, and many of them are from Africa. And what we heard is that there was a real barrier to their ability to access healthy, hardy greens, kale, collards, and others. Often they need to rely on an emergency food system or a pantry for their food needs when they first arrive in Maine. And if you go to a pantry, you'll often find products like B&M baked beans or Kraft mac and cheese. But you don't find a lot of healthy, hardy greens, which is a staple for a lot of their meal prep. So we did a pilot project working with some farmers through Penny Jordan, Farms for Food Equity, and we were able to first get a lot of fresh collards and kale into the system. What we also learned in the process, working with the immigrant community in doing some farm walks, is that all of the leaves in the brassica family can be utilized and upcycled. Cauliflower leaves, for example, that are left in the field. Broccoli leaves left in the field. Brussels sprout crowns, which are topped about 3 weeks before harvest, left in the ground. So we wondered, if we were able to use that wasted product and blend it into the collards and kale at processing, could we create a product that has the same profile and taste balance to be used in traditional African meals like chicken and kale stew from the Congo, from the Democratic Republic of the Congo? And what we found is that, yes, we can use all of that. Our goal is to do fresh in season. So fresh kale, collards, and chard right up until the end of October. In October and November, We convert that fresh product in processing. It's chopped, it's blanched, and it's blast frozen in 1 pound bags that are then also delivered through Wayside, through their distribution network, to pantries around southern Maine. I'm really excited that we're going to scale up both of these projects next year. The processing of the kale and the collards, as you can imagine, is time consuming. We did small batch processing by hand with the help of the Mid-Coast Hunger Prevention Partners. But next year, we're going to enter into a partnership with Atlantic Sea Farm. They harvest and process kelp during the winter, and their machinery sits idle in the summer. They can process 5,000 pounds a day. And it's going to allow us to bring the collards, the kale, and all of those unused brassica leaves to one facility to be processed, blanched, blast frozen, and then stored for delivery. And our partnership with BIPOC Farms is incredibly important to us. We purchase tomatoes, carrots, onions, any off grades from New Roots Cooperative Farm, Liberation Farms, and Isuken Cooperative Farm. So we're trying to, again, use products that are quite literally left in the field, in the dirt, and turn them into a healthy, nutritious option for kids, for schools, for hospitals, and the Department of Corrections. And Bill, I'll let you introduce Mohammed from New Roots.
Mohammed, you're up. How, as part of this partnership, how did you become involved, and what is it on your end that is both interesting and challenging? Did we lose Mohammed?
Mohammed is here, but he's on mute. He's coming off. I don't think his camera is able to display. Oh no, there he is. Excellent.
Well, hello everybody. My name is Mohammed Sheikh, and I am the farm coordinator at New Roots Cooperative Farm. We focus on cultivating fresh produce using sustainable methods, and our goal is always to provide healthy foods in our community, promoting environmental stewardship. I think most of the callings here echoed like what we do and like how we joined the project and why this project is very important to us. But we do grow vegetables mostly, and we always focus on growing our community needs. As Doug mentioned, African products are very hard to get in Maine, such as African corn, the collard greens, they call it sakuma, amaranth. And yeah, that's mostly what we grow, but we also grow our regular vegetables. And in the past few years, it's been very challenging with the COVID and finding markets. And so attending meetings, just mutual interest of like having like the idea of sustainable agriculture and food production. We were able to connect with the Mariner project and that's organization, and through that we were able to like have a stream income, and it was very important to our farmers who are mostly Somali immigrants who came here with like barriers, and like to this day face like many challenges of like language barrier, resource barrier, finding access to like other sources, and using what do you call other researchers, trainings, coming to meetings. The Maine Mariner project was able to help us, like become an upcycle partnership. As Doug explained, They were able to buy some produce from us, zucchinis, tomatoes, and other fresh ingredients to make like a base main product. And we were really happy. In the past, we used to just leave products, a lot of them on the field. No one would pick them up. Nobody cared about it. When this opportunity came, it was like a new market for all of us. And that's how we all ended up working together. And sometimes we don't have all of the ingredients, and that's where our other partners come in. It's Iscoon and the Somali Bantu farmers, and we all support each other in effort, to support food insecurity. And yeah, that's mostly everything about Newards, and we're really happy to be part of this collaborative, working together. Not leaving produce on the field is very important. Sometimes labor intensive is very hard, especially for farmers. There's not enough pay out there, and some of our farmers are at an old age, and it's just difficult, And some things we find very challenging these days is finding new farmers that are young and join us. But we are working on that, and every year we're getting new members joining us, and we get a lot of trainings, and we're just happy, to be in Maine. We don't like the weather like today, but we're working, and right now we have stuff in the greenhouses, heat is working, but we're always happy, I'm home, so I do apologize the background sound. So yes, that's where we are, and thank you. And thank you for everybody being here.
Thank you, Mohammed. I want to do a quick sort of lightning round here. My guess is the vast majority of folks in Maine have no clue as to what's happening. And I think these three groups and projects have presented a range of both problems and solutions that we'll see much more of in the years to come. But I think it's just terribly exciting that the types of products, the types of relationships, and the types of solutions that have come to be just in the last couple or 3 years. I mean, this is pretty amazing, and I know there are many more projects out there starting and expected to grow. If each of you could sort of pick the most significant challenge you think you face in going forward, and you sort of, I think all of you have alluded to some piece of that. I'd like to go quickly around, starting with Ben and Patrick. What if you each had to say, okay, as I move ahead in this arena, what's my biggest concern, by the thing that's going to challenge me the most? Ben or Pat? Patrick, who's going to go? Take it, Patrick or Ben.
I can speak to it, Ben, but did you have anything to say there?
I think what I was just going to say is, for us, it's bandwidth to pursue what seems like endless opportunities. When we look at everything that can happen with the stuff that Patrick's using and all the elements in the shell, and other parts of the waste that's currently just compost right now, there's so much more that can be done, and yet we're spread so thin, and how are we going to actually figure out how to maximize this stuff? So we want more of Patrick, and we want more Patricks. Basically, we need more people who have these great ideas who can come in and basically help us take something that's going down the drain or not getting its highest value use, and work with us to figure out how to maximize its value.
Patrick, any thoughts?
That's an interesting point. It was really interesting to reflect on how significant it seems in the second group it is to be timing the supply chain based on X amount of lead time we need to produce a certain product by. The same on the farm with the supply chain we've established. We have to look into the future, and for us, the future is doubling or tripling every single year. We started with Luke's with a very small setup. Year one, Amber and I were going in and doing the process. We now have it scaled up ourselves every morning and afternoon, and then we'd build a business in the afternoon. The next year, I think we had one person on the Luke's team doing some collection. Then we had 3. This year, we have over a dozen, I believe. And so going that quickly is very difficult and can be scary when you're doing something that is not well, it's never been done before, so it's not well documented from a quality control standpoint. So every year we run into new things that make X material in Y time frame Z level of viability, and it's really strange to try to go as fast as we're going, collect all this stuff, be okay to eat the cost of the waste, or try to find, you know, the adage for a startup is building a plane as it's going down. It's not going down, but it's building the, how are we going to upcycle this additional upcycled material that didn't meet our spec, or remedy it so that we can mitigate waste and improve yield on the fly as we go. So I think for us, the challenge has been ensuring our cash flow cycles allow for us in our partnership to produce enough, because lobster is a seasonal business as well. You know, we think about it as from May to December, we can get supply. We'll have to look into potentially Q3 of 2025 right now for buying the material because of our manufacturing lead time. And then B, how can we solve for quality issues or new problems that nobody has faced before year over year over year? And it's going well, but that's the most significant challenge, and that's what it means to be entrepreneurial.
Thank you, Patrick. Ben and Bethany, what say you?
Excuse me. I'll jump in quickly because it kind of piggybacks off of what Patrick was saying. For us at Harvest Maine, it's really about kind of going from being, I think, what is a good idea of how we take stuff that would otherwise be heading to compost or maybe left in the field and turning it into some kind of consumer packaged good that people find value in, to scaling that up to being in a consumer packaged good industry, which is totally unfamiliar to me. Luckily, my business partner has a little bit more experience in it, but we're dealing with that right now and all the logistics that come with how do we go from, 300 units a week to 3,000 units a week, or even greater as years, the next 3 to 5 years come on board and a new product line comes into play. So I think I'm gonna say it's fun and exciting, but it's requiring kind of that heroic effort that we need to figure out how to make it a sustainable path of business production and all of the components that go into a successful business, because you can't stay in startup mode forever. So it is an exciting time. I think our biggest challenge is how do we kind of institutionalize our processes and start to hand them over to staff as we build up a team. So I'm excited for that process, but that's going to be our biggest challenge.
Bethany.
I think our biggest challenge, I really appreciate the bandwidth comment, because I think that's something that gets like really neglected sometimes when we're talking about running a business, just like how much capacity you have, especially if it's small or your management team is really small, or I can't speak to how other businesses are organized, but I mean, for us, it's like, I'm like the head of HR. I'm the head of marketing. I'm the head of all these things, and any sort of new project. So then you have that to look forward to as you would bring on people. But and so any new project is, finding that line between profitability and like effectively executing it, that sort of runway is challenging, I think. And then in general, I will say, I think something that's unique to farming that's going on kind of right now is that the production landscape or climate is like changing really rapidly. Like in the last 5 years, you know, I think if you talked to us 5 years ago, we were growing broccoli really successfully with occasional failures. And now with the changing climate in Maine, we're really having to like look at, can we even grow broccoli anymore at all? Because it's the, you know, there's certain diseases that are just, you know, they need to be, you need certain frost and freeze cycles to eliminate them. And you need certain, you know, you need the whole like fall. There's, you know, there's sort of climactic expectations of Maine have just changed a lot. And so our production is changing a lot, which then is definitely going to have trickle down effects on Ben, you know, Ben and everyone that we sell to. And so that's really something that we're looking at, you know, big zoom out, you know, sort of challenges. And then, yeah, no, I think for us, it's definitely just like both like, it's like intellectual and like physical work capacity to kind of meet new markets. Like I said, we're always having to we've got sort of original commitments that sort of sustain the business more generally. And then, so like filling this into the corners and allowing it to grow to a place where it has its own inertia, like it's worthwhile. And I can fully plan for it. But I'd say we're on that track, so that's great.
Thank you, Bethany. Doug?
I think for us, one of the biggest challenges is that local foods cost more to purchase. We're up against a industrial agricultural, right, complex that has made food incredibly cheap for institutions to buy. To create a quality product that is Maine grown, Maine processed, Maine made, Maine delivered, often costs more per case than, say, a food service director could buy from Cisco. So one, it's a little bit like 20 years ago when everybody wanted to buy organic and it cost a lot more. And eventually a lot of people started to buy organic, and even Hannaford had to start carrying it and the prices come down. The greatest, I think, challenge to us is that will schools or hospitals or Department of Corrections, who are on thin budget lines, have the wherewithal to pay a little bit extra to buy local? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. The other challenge we saw last year was with tomatoes. Luckily, we had purchased 3,000 pounds and kept them in a freezer from Liberation Farms, or we might have not been able to have enough product to actually produce the marinara for the 19 schools that had pre-purchased. So those to me are two of the biggest challenges. Can we scale up fast enough to bring the price point down per case and per pallet for schools in Maine?
Thank you, Doug. Mohammed, do you have any reaction or comments from the producer side?
No, I think everything is said. You know, we did face also some challenges. Last year we had a lot of rain. We weren't able to grow, you know, most crops that we grow. As Doug mentioned, we weren't able to grow a lot of tomatoes as usual. We had to like source out to other farmers, you know, to cover some other stuff. So yeah, the climate is very challenging some years. But other than that, no further comment.
Thank you, Mohammed. We don't have much time left. Are there any questions from the audience attendees? I don't see anything in the chat. Anyone have any other questions? Otherwise, I'll continue with some follow-ups.
I have a question for the Maine Marinara project.
Sure.
And that and Doug and Mohammed. I guess I'm wondering with your primary market being like schools and institutions that are publicly funded, is there any chance, or like, do you see any potential for like, if public policy priorities change, for that being like helping to balance the cost differential between your product and other things? Like, is that something that we can advocate for with our local representatives?
Bethany, thank you so much for that question. Policy matters. And having the political wherewithal to be able to pass policies in Augusta, like the local foods fund, right? It has to make it through the House, the Senate, appropriations. It's a process. And with advocacy groups like Full Plates, Full Potential, and they were able to succeed. It's $5,500 per school, not a lot. But here's the thing. I think only 25 to 30% of schools are utilizing that funding because they have other barriers that get in the way. If they spend $5,000 on apples, local apples, and the kids don't eat them, it goes to waste. But one of the things we're also realizing, many rural school districts, if you want to talk about food equity for just a minute, have lost the ability to scratch cook. Many of them, we heard a story at the Native Maine Food Show. There's an elementary school in Porter, Maine that can't even boil water. They have no stove, let alone an oven. So we're trying to create products that can be delivered that are almost like kits. Here's your marinara, warm it up. But back to your point, the more money we can convince Augusta to give to institutions to be able to subsidize this cost, the better it's going to be. But again, that political win can change. My worry is always, the appropriations committee will say like, well, we did this and, not all these schools participated. Why? Right? Just be easier not to ask the question of why and focus on that barrier than it would to pull back some of the funding. So yeah, my hope is that, I've always said, corporate ag owns our food system. And if we want it back, we're going to have to buy it back. And that's going to take federal, state support through policy, I think, to be able to do that.
Other questions and comments from the panel or from the audience? Of each other, anyone? I mean, what I see, this has really been interesting in terms of the range of products and challenges that each of these groups have. They are very similar, and I think they speak to another issue, because the driver of this has been dealing with food waste, which does make up from 30 to 40%. And you can talk about this locally or globally. The numbers are roughly the same of the food chain. And not only is that, not only do we have people who are not receiving enough daily nutrition to live, and that could address parts of that, but that food waste is also becoming a major contributor to climate change. And so what happens here is that we're taking on multiple issues by dealing with waste, and then within that, taking on multiple issues of the distribution chains and who we're serving in that. And I think today we've seen the range of the end consumer and who and how they can participate in purchasing what they're doing to solve their food and other problems. And then we have on the other end, how much of that waste can we reduce without negatively impacting the producer, the farmer, the harvester in that process. This is 3D chess at its best. And I think we've been extremely fortunate here in Maine to have a group of folks who are taking it on and leading the way. And I hope we see in the future, and hopefully enough people see this presentation in spite of the snowstorm, to come up with their own ideas of how they may want to utilize what they have for waste in their work, or how they can utilize that in developing product. I think this is a rapidly emerging field, and as we know from last week, there is already a National Association of Upcycling, and there's already certification programs in place to certify, so that we don't have people going in and sort of greening it without really doing it. So I think this past two presentations have been phenomenal relative to addressing these issues. And if there are no more questions, and do we have any from anybody, members, last chance, I'm going to turn it back to Tanya or to Sue. Tanya, you're taking this, I think, at this point.
Great. Thanks, Bill. And thanks to all of you for being on the call today, especially in light of this snowstorm and blowing and snow outside. There's just huge hurdles to some of these issues, and it's really exciting and encouraging to see the ways that you all are trying to embrace these issues and really make a difference. Thanks to everyone for joining today's webinar, and big thanks to all of you for being on the call today. This concludes our 2024 Selling More Maine Food series. We'll be posting materials from both the sessions online in the next few weeks. And we hope folks will watch for an evaluation form so you can give us some feedback on how your experience with the series went this year. Thank you all. Stay safe and have a great day.